Hey brothers, this is Justin with Masonic Improvement. Today I'm going to address a question that was asked me on one of my videos. It was a response to my Why I Left Freemasonry video, and I thought it was really good. It was pretty relevant, and I felt as though it deserved its own video, so we're going to go ahead and just kind of talk about that real quick. Before I get started, if you haven't already, please go ahead and hit subscribe so you can follow my channel. I usually post things about once a week. I kind of took a hiatus for the last 2 weeks, but know that there will be more stuff coming, so go ahead and hit that button and you can keep up with everything. So the response was by user David Hibbets, and what was said is, my comment is that you found that lodge my comment is that you found the lodge not to be what you expected or were interested in. Okay, I can go with that. But what you don't explain is, what did you expect and what do you think lodges need to do to attract the interest of men your age? And that's a really good question. So let me just go ahead and start out by telling you, I'm 34 years old. I was born in '83, and so I fall into that millennial category, just barely, but I'm in there. As for what I expected when I went in, that's really hard to say now. This was over 10 years ago when I joined. I joined shortly after I turned 21. At the time, that's how old you had to be in Texas to petition. The reason I wanted to join was because my dad is a Freemason and my granddad is a Freemason. And I grew up seeing that symbolism, the square and compass all over the house, and my granddad's ring. So I was familiar vaguely with the fraternity, but I didn't really know much about it, and I just kind of jumped into it as soon as I turned old enough. So I didn't really know what to expect, but I figured, I guess, since my family had been involved in it for so long, that it had to be a good organization. It had to be worth my time. So I'm not really sure if I had any concrete expectations. I do know that there were a few things that kind of surprised me when I was going through the petition process and everything. And that was small things like the quality of the meals, or rather the lack of quality of the meals during the meetings, the dress at the meetings, the demeanor and the type of discussions that were taking place at these dinners before the meetings, because I couldn't actually sit in the meeting until I was a master. But I would still go and I would sit out and eat with everybody. And usually the Tyler or somebody else would stay outside the lodge and go over the work with me. But so as far as like those concrete expectations, I really couldn't tell you now what they were, but I could tell you that there were several things that did not meet my expectations, and that was small things like that. But what I didn't realize at the time, or I probably should have realized, is that these small things were the result of larger problems that I would not really understand until I was involved longer and could actually sit in the meetings. And so the second question is, what do lodges need to do to attract men of my age? Here's the thing. Men my age are already being attracted to the fraternity. We have a respect for things like tradition and ritual and ceremony. And Freemasonry offers all this. And we're attracted to the fraternity, but the problem isn't getting us to join, it's retaining us. And I think my video that I mentioned earlier, why I left Freemasonry, I think that sums it up really well as to, why I left. And looking at the comments, not the crazy comments, but the comments of other Masons, that's a trend. It wasn't just me. This is a real problem. And if you look at a lot of people that said they left, many times it's for the same reasons as what I mentioned. So if you haven't watched the video, I really suggest that you do, because it really kind of helps frame everything that I'm talking about. But I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about what not to do, because I've already done that. I wanted to address the question directly, which is, what do we need to do to attract people? And instead of talking about attracting people, I'm just going to talk about retention, because I think, like I said, the attraction's already there. It's just once they realize a lot of things, they don't stick around. But there is one thing in that video that after some reflection, I've come to realize, and I want to talk about that real quick because it is important and it does address the question. So whenever I was going through the degrees, there's a lot of memory work. In the memory work, as you know, if you're a Mason, it focuses on, it focuses on the ritual and the symbolism and the application of that, or it should. Now, so you're going through all this stuff and you're learning all these things, and it's kind of setting you up for these high expectations of what actually takes place in the meetings, or at least it did. Like I said, you can actually sit in a lodge as an EA now, but at the time you had to be a master. So, I'm learning all this work and I'm not knowing what's going on in the meetings, but I'm getting the impression based off all this ritual I'm learning and all these question and answers that whatever's going on in the actual meeting is in some way relevant to these things I'm learning right now. And once I got through and I turned in my master's work and I can actually sit in the meetings, and I realized that they were nothing but business meetings, and that's where I got kind of disillusioned and I left. And that right there, I think, is what's really important to focus on, is that something I've learned from studying millennials is that we really like things to be authentic. And when you have all this memory work that is in sharp contrast to what's actually going on in your meetings and the actual work the lodge is doing, it's not authentic. And that's, I think, what really hit me that day when I was pounding that water and I realized this is not authentic. I learned all this stuff. I went through all these fantastic and elaborate rituals and ceremonies, which feel so disconnected from the actual meetings and the work that the lodge is doing. And that's what drove me off. And I think that's probably what's driving off a lot of millennials, is that there's this huge disconnection. There's no authenticity between what we're told the lodge is supposed to do and what the lodge actually does. So that really brings the question, what can a lodge do to bring that authenticity back to itself? And there's a lot of things that you can do, and I've probably covered some of this stuff before, and I'm going to just cover it very quickly because I know a lot of my viewers don't like really long videos. If y'all want, I can go back later and cover everything individually. I may even write about it at some time, but I'll just list those things real quick. 1, guard the west gate. Number 2, guard the progressive line. Number 3, raise the bar on your standards and hold yourself to them. Number 4, create a mission statement for your lodge, have some kind of vision, and know where you're going and actually work towards it. 5, I'm just going to tell you right now, you got to do something about your dues. Now, there's a lot to be said about the dues. I kind of covered it before, so I'm going to leave that out there too. And I know a lot of people have really strong opinions about dues, but it is what it is. Number 6, streamline your meetings, please. We don't need to spend 15 minutes hearing the minutes from the previous meetings, and we don't need to spend another 15 minutes hearing communications from Grand Lodge. In many jurisdictions, there are ways that you can still share the minutes, you can still share Grand Lodge communication without breaking any laws, and it doesn't take all this time in lodge to do this. What can you do with this extra time? Number 7, have some kind of education process. There are various ways you can do this, and the 2 best ways to probably do it, or at least the simplest ways, is just have some kind of presentation during lodge, or even better, get a guest speaker. So that's all I'm going to say about that. That was a really good question. If there's any of these points that you really want me to focus on more, I'd be glad to. I'm just trying to keep it short and sweet for the sake of time. But I'd love to hear what everyone else thinks about this also. How do you feel about all these ideas? I've offered my opinion, but what do you think about what I've suggested? I know that out of these 7 points that there has to be something that not everybody agrees on. Tell me why you do or why you don't. I'd love to hear from you. Please be sure to give me a like if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks again. Take care.